The sky of Valtor Prime shimmered with the light of 1,000 stars as a galactic nexus arena loomed ahead, a floating citadel suspended in the vastness of space. The colossal structure, formed from the remnants of an ancient star, pulsed with energy, its every surface alive with shifting colors that no human eye could fully comprehend. Alien species from every corner of the galaxy crowded the floating platforms, their forms as varied as the stars themselves. Shifting sand-like entities floated gracefully through the air, casting ethereal shadows over the angular crystalline beings who hummed with energy that echoed through the stone pathways. In the center, an amphitheater full of insectoid creatures buzzed excitedly, while liquid-based entities sloshed in the air, their forms shifting and flowing like water caught in a cosmic current. This wasn't just a gathering, it was a moment of destiny. The Galactic Ascendance Tournament, the most prestigious event in the universe, had begun, and every species was on edge, eager to witness the arrival of the champion. In the distance, a massive holographic display began to flicker, announcing the appearance of a new contender. Earth, a fledgling planet from the Milky Way, one whose inhabitants had long been dismissed as insignificant. As the galaxy's most elite warriors prepped for the tournament, one figure stood out like a rogue comet in a sea of distant stars. Marcus Grant, the first human ever to qualify for the Galactic Ascendance Tournament, walked into the preparation chamber without a care in the world. His disheveled hair poked out from under a faded baseball cap, and his casual attire, a ripped t-shirt and worn jeans, was in stark contrast to the armored and pristine battlesuits of the other competitors. While the other contestants meticulously checked their gear, adjusting energy shields and calibrating plasma blades, Marcus casually leaned against a wall, tapping his foot to a tune only he could hear. "Hey! Does anyone know where the food court is?" he asked loudly, breaking the tense silence. The alien beings around him exchanged confused glances. The ancient reptilian gladiator, Azeroth, was deep in meditation, his forearms folded in perfect symmetry. A being of pure energy, Zilithar, shimmered as he adjusted his intangible form. But Marcus? He cracked open a can of soda and took a deep sip, staring at the holographic map of the arena, seemingly unfazed by the overwhelming odds stacked against him. The Galactic Ascendance Tournament had a history spanning millennia, decades of champions, each more skilled than the last, and none of them human. Marcus Grant, the lone earthling, had qualified against all odds, but the real test was yet to come. In the center of the arena, towering like a monolith, stood the reigning champion, Zorathar, the warlord of the Vorth Empire. Zorathar's reputation was legendary. He had conquered entire star systems with his strategic genius and unmatched combat skills. Clad in ancient battle armor forged in the core of a collapsed star, his every movement was calculated, precise, and utterly terrifying. At over 7 feet tall, with his emerald green skin and 4 muscular arms, he was a force of nature in the arena. For centuries, no one had even come close to dethroning him. As the tournament's grand announcement echoed through the arena, Zorathar calmly sat in his throne, his cold eyes scanning the list of challengers. When his gaze fell upon Marcus Grant, a barely noticeable smirk curled at the corner of his lips. The odds against Marcus were astronomical, impossible, but Zorathar was no stranger to underdogs. To the Vorth Empire, the idea of a human defeating Zorathar was laughable, almost offensive. And yet, as the alien species around him whispered and bet amongst themselves, the seeds of doubt were being sown. Could this foolish human defy the centuries-old rule of the galaxy's greatest warrior? The challenge was clear: defeat Zorathar or face extinction. The stakes had never been higher. As the tournament drew nearer, the other contestants were deep in their own preparation rituals, practicing ancient combat techniques, meditating in zero gravity, or channeling raw cosmic energy. Marcus, however, was doing something different. He stood in front of a training hologram, bouncing on his heels and muttering to himself. "All right, let's see if I can make this work," he said with a grin, setting his soda can down on the floor. Without a moment's hesitation, he launched into a series of spontaneous dance moves, spinning, twisting, and throwing an occasional hip-hop gesture. The arena filled with a strange hum of confused murmurs. A nearby mechanical warrior, towering with sleek metallic armor, froze mid-swing as its sensors registered the attack patterns. A gaseous being, its form fluctuating in a shimmering bubble, tilted its shape, unable to process the human's erratic movements. Crystalline competitors blinked in a manner that suggested they were vibrating with amusement. Marcus continued, blissfully unaware of the chaos he was causing. "You gotta keep it loose, right? Flexibility is key," he shouted, his movements completely out of sync with the rest of the galaxy's most serious and disciplined fighters. An insectoid alien, clearly disturbed by Marcus's antics, whispered to another, "Is this normal for humans?" "Honestly," the second replied, "I've seen worse, but it's still a first." Marcus's first match was against a towering, heavily armored Calgarian, a species known for their brute strength and near-impenetrable defense. The Calgarian's gauntlet-clad fist cracked the ground with each step, and his battle strategy was simple: crush anything in his path. The crowd roared as the match began. The Calgarian charged forward, swinging his massive fists, aiming to flatten Marcus in a single blow. But Marcus, with his usual nonchalance, casually sidestepped the attack, tossing a small device into the air. It emitted a high-pitched sound, like a dog whistle. The Calgarian paused, his massive body stiffening in confusion. Marcus seized a moment, pulling out an ordinary laser pointer from his pocket and flashing it right in the Calgarian's face. The Calgarian's massive head whipped back, clearly bewildered by the tiny red bouncing on the floor. He started swatting at the air, growling in frustration. The audience erupted in laughter, but Marcus, still calm, delivered a perfect low blow that sent the Calgarian stumbling, his balance lost. "Sorry, buddy," Marcus called over his shoulder. "You can't catch me if you can't see me." In the next match, Marcus faced Ascension Nebula, an amorphous being made entirely of swirling cosmic gases. The crowd gasped in awe at the nebula's ethereal form, but Marcus was unfazed. Instead of trying to outfight the creature, he pulled out a cheap fan he'd picked up in the food court earlier and began waving it in the air. The nebula, whose entire form was reliant on energy flows, began to destabilize, swirling in confusion at the unnatural gusts. The opponent's movement became erratic as the fan's simple wind disrupted its flow, sending the nebula into a wild spiral. Marcus, grinning ear to ear, casually flipped the fan switch to its highest setting, sending the creature off balance before launching a series of rapid, calculated moves that destabilized its form. "Really?" The crowd muttered in disbelief. "Hey, sometimes the simplest solution works," Marcus said with a shrug. Zorathar stood alone in the quiet shadows of his private chamber, staring intently at the holographic projection of Marcus Grant's most recent match. The footage replayed over and over, showing Marcus dodging the Calgarian's crushing blows with a casual grin, and then, absurdly, using a laser pointer to disorient the massive warrior. The warlord's fist clenched, his knuckles making a soft grinding sound inside his gloves. His four eyes narrowed, his emerald skin shimmering in frustration. This human, the display flickered again, showing Marcus defeating the nebula with nothing but a fan, a simple, almost insulting contraption against a creature made of cosmic gases. Zorathar's breath grew heavy as he shifted his weight, tail flicking behind him with increasing agitation. How is he winning? Zorathar thought. This is not how the tournament works. The other competitors, the galaxy's finest, adhered to centuries-old strategies, power, precision, and the perfect execution of ancient rituals. There was honor and tradition in combat that tested strength and skill to their limits. But this human, this ridiculous creature, was throwing everything out of balance. No honor, no tradition, just absurdity. Zorathar's mind churned as he considered the implications. He doesn't follow the rules. He's breaking the game itself. In the silence of his chamber, Zorathar's thoughts began to darken. This human threatens more than my reign. He threatens the very essence of what makes a true warrior. A deep, unsettling realization settled in. Marcus wasn't just challenging him. He was challenging the core principles of combat in the galaxy. His unorthodox methods, his refusal to fight properly, were sowing chaos in the rules Zorathar had built his entire identity upon. "This cannot stand," Zorathar muttered to himself, his voice low and dangerous. "I will teach him that tradition is what wins wars, not distractions." The air in the Galactic Nexus arena crackled with tension as Marcus Grant prepared for the final match. His unorthodox methods had defied expectations at every turn, and now the entire galaxy was watching. Betting markets that had once listed him as a mere footnote in the tournament history were now flashing the words "error does not compute." Spectators, once dismissive of the human, were now whispering among themselves, unsure whether they should be impressed or horrified by the chaos he was causing the established order of combat. Across the galaxy, officials and competitors were left in stunned disbelief. Zorthar, the warlord of the Vorth Empire, sat in his private chamber, brooding in a rare moment of vulnerability. How did he make it this far? The mighty Zorthar, undefeated for centuries, was now forced to confront a question that gnawed at his very essence. Could tradition truly be defeated by something as absurd as Marcus Grant? The other competitors, once proud and confident in their battle prowess, had already begun to voice their doubts. The Aquanids, an ancient species known for their aquatic combat style, were the first to speak. "He's not following any of the standard techniques," one murmured, her translucent skin flashing in consternation. "It's as though he doesn't even care about winning." In the stands, a consortium of planetary ambassadors muttered amongst themselves, shifting uncomfortably in their seats. Some questioned whether the tournament had become a farce, while others marveled at how a human had made it this far. But it wasn't just the spectators who were rattled. It was the very structure of the tournament itself. Officials in the control room glanced nervously at each other. They had all read the algorithms, seen the predictions. Marcus's success was statistically impossible. Every match he won defied the odds, and with each victory, the foundation tradition trembled. "How is he doing this?" one of the officials asked, glancing at a holographic display that showed Marcus's next opponent, Zorthar. "This is no longer a fight for victory. It's a fight for the soul of the tournament itself." In the arena, the final battle loomed ahead, and the weight of expectation pressed down on Marcus's shoulders. But Marcus, in his usual manner, took it all in stride. He cracked his neck, adjusted his baseball cap, and glanced at the towering figure of Zorthar standing across from him. "Well," Marcus said with a grin, "looks like this just got interesting." The arena was silent as Marcus Grant and Zorthar stood across from each other, the anticipation in the air so thick it almost felt like a tangible force. The entire galaxy watched, their eyes fixed on this battle, a contest between the most unpredictable human to ever step foot in the arena and the reigning champion, Zorthar, the embodiment of tradition. Zorthar's form radiated with ancient power, his battle armor glowing with the energy of countless conquests. He moved with the grace of a seasoned warrior, every muscle rippling as he prepared for a fight that had been written in the stars for millennia. Marcus, on the other hand, stood with his hands in his pockets, his baseball cap slightly askew, his stance casual, as though he were waiting for a bus. A few moments passed, and he looked up at Zorthar with a shrug. "You ready for this?" he asked, not even attempting to hide the grin on his face. Zorthar's cold, four-eyed gaze narrowed. "This is where your chaos ends, human," he growled, his voice like gravel scraping across metal. With a roar, Zorthar charged, his four massive arms swinging in a flurry of precision and deadly intent. Each punch created shockwaves, the force of centuries of combat training behind every strike. Marcus, however, wasn't interested in tradition. He dodged with an almost exaggerated flair, sidestepping and ducking with such ease that it seemed almost comical. "Not bad," Marcus yelled as he ducked under a particularly vicious blow. "But you're kind of slow for someone who's been around for centuries." The crowd gasped, unsure whether to be outraged or amused by Marcus's casual tone. Zorthar's response was swift and brutal. He unleashed a blast of energy from his gauntlet, a wave of concentrated force that could flatten entire cities. But Marcus, with the most casual flick of his wrist, pulled out a random piece of tech from his jacket pocket. A small drone. "Hey, buddy, catch this," Marcus called, tossing the drone in the air. It zoomed right into the energy blast path, immediately redirecting the shot into a harmless plume of smoke. Marcus raised an eyebrow, impressed with his own ingenuity. Not bad for a guy who just learned to use a drone. Zorthar's frustration grew. He had faced countless foes, but never one who seemed so indifferent to the rules of combat, so unconcerned with victory. The warlord lunged again, this time creating an intricate pattern of energy blades, each one flashing like lightning in a storm. With an almost nonchalant gesture, Marcus pulled out a rubber chicken from his bag and waved it around like a sword. Is that really necessary? Zorathar snarled, momentarily thrown off by the absurdity of it all. Marcus, eyes twinkling, responded with a wide grin. Oh, absolutely. I found it really helps me focus. The crowd roared with laughter, but Zorathar was done playing games. His next attack was a powerful vortex of gravitational energy, twisting the arena around them. The ground cracked beneath Marcus's feet as the very laws of physics seemed to bend. Yet Marcus, unfazed, activated a gravity-defying gadget from his belt, a simple pair of hover boots, and floated effortlessly above the twisting chaos. Not bad, Marcus called out, hands in his pockets, floating casually around Zorathar's attacks. But, have you ever tried, not doing that? Frustration boiled within Zorathar as he launched a final, all-encompassing attack, a perfect fusion of all his powers. The arena itself seemed to tremble as Zorathar aimed his ultimate weapon at Marcus, a swirling singularity that could crush anything in its path. But Marcus, in his usual unpredictable fashion, pulled out his phone and opened a game app. Just one more level, he muttered under his breath, tapping the screen as if the fate of the galaxy wasn't in the balance. The crowd held its collective breath as Zorathar's attack neared. Then, in a move that defied every expectation, Marcus flipped the screen of his phone, activating an emergency deflect mode that used the game's physics engine to redirect the singularity's energy back at Zorathar, sending him stumbling backward in shock. As the dust settled and the arena fell into stunned silence, Marcus stood there, one hand casually in his pocket, the other still holding his phone. Well, that was fun, he said with a grin. I guess we all have our own style. Zorathar, breathing heavily, collapsed to one knee. He had never encountered anything like this. The ancient traditions of precision, the rules he had followed for centuries, they had all been rendered irrelevant by the chaos and unpredictability of Marcus Grant. The galaxy would never be the same. The arena erupted in chaos as the final blast settled into nothingness. Zorathar lay on the ground, defeated. His once mighty form crumpled in exhaustion, his energy drained, his control over the battle completely shattered. For the first time in centuries, the warlord of the Vorth Empire had lost. And it wasn't to another master of combat or a warrior of tradition. It was to a human, someone who had thrown away the rulebook and rewritten the game. Marcus stood tall, his hands still in his pockets, his eyes scanning the stunned crowd. There was no grand victory pose, no elaborate celebration. He simply looked around and gave a small shrug. Well, that was a lot more exhausting than I thought. The galaxy was silent for a moment, and then the applause began. Hesitant at first, then building in volume and intensity. Spectators who had once mocked him now cheered with genuine admiration, marveling at the sheer audacity of Marcus's approach. Zorathar slowly rose to his feet, his four eyes fixed on the human. His pride had taken a blow, but there was something else stirring in his chest, an unexpected sense of respect. You broke the game, he said, his voice a mix of awe and grudging admiration. You don't fight like a warrior. You fight like a force of nature. Marcus grinned, scratching his head. Yeah, I guess I've never been one for following the rules. They're more like suggestions, you know? As Marcus left the arena, a strange sense of satisfaction settled over him. He had done it. He had taken down the galaxy's greatest champion, not with strength or ancient techniques, but with adaptability, humor, and the audacity to challenge everything the galaxy held dear about combat. Later, in the quiet of his quarters, he sat down, reflecting on the battle. His phone buzzed and he chuckled when he saw a new message. Betting odds to your next fight are even worse. They say you can't win with a rubber chicken. What's your plan now? Marcus smiled, typing a quick reply. Honestly, I think I've got a few more tricks up my sleeve. Outside, the galaxy had begun to change. The victory of a human, against all odds, against centuries of tradition, had sparked something within the galaxy. The rigid laws of combat, the ancient ways that had governed civilizations for eons, were now being questioned. If a human could defy the status quo with nothing but wit and unpredictability, Then perhaps there was more to life than following the rules. Zorathar's words echoed in Marcus's mind as he stared out into the cosmos. Perfection doesn't leave room for evolution. Marcus leaned back in his chair, sipping his soda. Exactly, he murmured, a grin tugging at his lips. Rules aren't limits. They're just opportunities to think outside the box. And with that, the galaxy wasn't just different. It was evolving one chaotic, unpredictable human at a time. As Marcus looked out into the vast expanse of space, he couldn't help but grin. The galaxy was full of mysteries, challenges, and now, a few enemies who were likely rethinking their assumptions about Earthlings. He had won the tournament, but the fight had only just begun. Well, Marcus muttered to himself, pulling on his jacket and preparing to leave his quarters. That was fun, but I'm pretty sure the galaxy's not done with me yet. With a swipe of his hand, he activated the communication console. A simple message blinked on the screen, a request from Earth. Mission accomplished. Next steps. Marcus leaned back in his chair, eyes twinkling. Send the rest, he said with a grin, tapping the button to send his response. Across the galaxy, representatives from combat schools, military outposts, and planetary governments were already on high alert. Rumors were swirling about the human problem, and the realization was beginning to spread. Humanity was no longer the galaxy's underdog. It was a force to be reckoned with. The screen blinked again, and Marcus saw a new message come through, this one from Zorathar himself. You have awakened something in the galaxy. Human. I wonder what chaos you'll bring next. Marcus smirked and typed a response. Chaos is just another word for progress, my friend. As he left the room, the weight of the galaxy's uncertainty hung in the air. If Marcus Grant could change the rules of an ancient tradition, what else might humanity do when it set its mind to it? One thing was certain. The galaxy was in for a wild ride.